Well, good morning. And a cool morning across much of the state here with some frost reported in several areas of the state, but not a hard freeze like what we saw last week. But the bottom line is that major changes are underway here weather-wise, and the weather system that's brought all of the late winter conditions to the state is on its way eastward and into the Atlantic, and it's going to be replaced by something I think most people will find much more appealing, and that is we have a significant warm-up coming up and probably an extended warm and maybe drier than normal period as well. And that's really the bottom line here, looking ahead at the next couple of weeks. But for the past week, as I mentioned, big cutoff low across the Great Lakes region here has stayed there. It was the second one we've had in the last 3 weeks, and those systems at this time of the year are well, they make conditions really, really difficult and usually extended unsettled periods of weather and cool. We for our mean temperatures for the past week on the left-hand side here, you can see not just Michigan, but the entire upper Midwest was colder than normal, generally from 6 to as much as 10 degrees Fahrenheit below the long-term averages. And for most of the state, our growing season thus far, I think probably the best analogy, it's been a roller coaster ride for temperatures. And just remember the second week of April, we had a week of really summer conditions, and then we've gone back to below normal. So up and down. And if, of course, you take the averages of those extremes, you end up somewhere close. But even in this case, because of the last 2 weeks, we really have, especially last week, we have ended up a little bit behind where we typically are. Just as importantly here, looking on the right-hand side at our precipitation over the last week, highly variable depending on location. Much of the state you can see on the order of a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch across much of lower Michigan, a little bit higher than that across the southeast and far south. But without question, well, we want to call it the winner here in terms of precipitation was the Upper Peninsula, especially central and western sections of the UP. And you can see this area up here near Marquette, where more than 5 inches, some cases more than 6 inches fell in the week. That's more than 300% of normal. And of course, I'm using the word precipitation because a good chunk of this fell in frozen form, and that included one of the a record-setting snowstorm here earlier in the week, late Sunday through really through Tuesday, even into early Wednesday. Some of the totals are just incredible. More than 30 inches fell. In a number of places, there's more than 30 inches on the ground at a couple of locations in the Gawney area, for example. And that snow fell right at or just slightly below freezing temperatures, and it was accompanied by 40-mile-per-hour winds. So it was a real challenge to deal with this. And I guess on a even for Upper Peninsula standards, that's something extraordinary. And again, it did set some records for that heaviest snowfall this late in the season. That said, the longer, in terms of longer term perspective, the big issue here is the water. And this has been also the wettest part of the state over the last several weeks. And so soils there are saturated. And now with another couple of inches of water equivalent on the surface in the form of that snowfall, melting is going to run off, and there will be more problems there, likely with flooding. So there are flood watches for much of central and western upper Michigan here, and that will be the case probably for the next at least week or two before some of that water finally makes its way back into the profile. So widely variable conditions across the state, but it's safe to say for most of us, with this cold, wet weather that we've had over the last several days, most fieldwork activity is ground to a halt. But that's going to be changing, and that's where we're going to be headed. One more thing here with soil moisture. I just talked about this a little bit. These are on the right-hand side here, or left-hand side here. This is relative soil moisture in the top 3 feet of the profile. And not surprisingly, you can see that it is, it's still at relatively high levels, but there's a gradient as you go north with more and more moisture as one goes north. And again, just that jives with what I just mentioned about Upper Michigan. In terms of percentiles, historically, on the right-hand side, you can see that most of the state still is running above normal for moisture in that top 3 feet for this time of the year. And that, again, that's not a surprise given what are the normal conditions that go back now into the month of March. Well, I mentioned in the forecast, big changes coming. Here's our surface map this morning of high pressure over well to our south anyway here. That's why we got a little bit of a more normal morning here, relatively clear and calm, at least less clouds and wind than we've had over the last week. But there is a weak weather system across northern Wisconsin that will move quickly from west to east across the state. That will at least give the chance or bring the chance for some scattered light rain. And if this, you're going to hear this theme too as well, especially over the next 48 hours. If we do see precipitation over the next couple of days, most likely in the far northern, northwestern parts of the state, and less so as you go south. I think most of the southern half of the state probably will remain dry. But there is a chance for light rain, and in the northern part of the state where the highest probabilities are, probably talking about a couple tenths or maybe a quarter of an inch would be it. But again, this is not widespread. It will be scattered here today, and that will also be the case tomorrow. This is tomorrow morning's weather map. You can see the green on there indicating at least the chance for some scattered precipitation, more light rain possible, mostly again in the northwestern half of the state, and then mostly probably variably cloudy and dry. Now, the other issue I think to bring up, and let me just go back here to today, it will be noticeably warmer today as the cold air that's been stuck here for much of the last week, it moves off and away to our east. It's going to be replaced by an upper air ridging feature that has quite a bit of warm air with it. So today will be several degrees warmer than what we saw yesterday. And that will be, again, the case tomorrow on Friday, albeit with, again, some clouds and the threat of showers in the north. Now, by Saturday, it looks almost like the same map, a repeat performance here. Most of the state, Saturday actually looks like a good day over most of the state with partly cloudy skies, warmer yet. We will see temperatures increase up into the 60s, into the 70s by Saturday for high temperatures, and continue there Sunday and then probably into much of next week. So that's really the leading edge or the front end of this extended warmer than normal period that's coming up. Our low temperatures from the upper 30s to mid 40s here overnight tonight, warming into the 40s to near 50 even by late in the weekend. So again, a significant warm up. Saturday for most of the state should be dry. And then the weather system that you see here on the map out across the northern Great Plains, that approaches us by Sunday. That's really for most of the state the next chance for anything significant in the way of precip. But even then, it is not expected to be a heavy or widespread type of event then either. But we will Sunday, Sunday night, Monday, and even into Tuesday, there will be the continuing threat of some showers, mostly light rain expected here. Nothing heavy or widespread, and then maybe dry by the time we get to the middle of next week as this big pattern change occurs. And that's what this particular graphic here shows on the left-hand side. These are forecast jet stream conditions as of Sunday morning. And if you've been looking at the weather maps over the last week, we've seen the same thing over and over with a big trough right over the Great Lakes. Well, that's gone. And you can see the very, very corner of it here on the map out over the Northern Atlantic, and that's where it belongs. But it's been replaced by a big upper air ridge, and meteorologically that means one thing, and warmer than normal. That the temperature departures from normal at the same time on Sunday morning here on the right-hand panel. You can see clearly that there is warmer than normal weather on the way here for a week, late in the weekend, and certainly into next week. And that's definitely our theme for next week. Precipitation totals for the upcoming week, and this is obviously a really important variable here as we look ahead and all of the field work that needs to be done. It depends on location, but you can see a fairly rapid drop off from more than half an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch in the areas that are wettest, ironically, right now. That would be western upper Michigan, even into the northwestern lower. That's where we would probably see the highest likelihood and the highest potential for precip, but dropping off rapidly to less than 1/4 of an inch in the eastern part of the state. So fairly big divide. I think most areas, though, we are looking at a drier than normal week, especially for central and southern sections of lower Michigan, and then less so as you go again to the northwest. So for most areas, it will be, the upcoming week will be drier than normal and warmer than normal as well. Our medium range forecast guidance is consistent with what we just saw for that forecast outlook for Sunday. The jet stream pattern here for, and both the 6 to 10 day and 8 to 14 day outlooks are very similar, but with the ridge over the middle of North America, including Michigan and the Great Lakes region, and a strong likelihood of warmer than normal mean temperatures. This is for the 9th through the 13th. That's and again, that looks like a very, very strong bet. Same for the 8 to 14 day time frame. Precip during the 6 to 10 day period, a note here is forecast at near normal. If I would have made this forecast, my own opinion, based on that upper air pattern, probably would have trended more towards the drier than normal. And we do see that come up in the 8 to 14 day outlook, not all of the state, but more of that drier than normal pattern. So again, warmer and drier than normal is certainly the direction that we're looking at for the middle of May, and then probably into the second half of May as well. Now, one last thing. We did get a revised our outlook for May that came out at the end of the month. We get one usually in the third week of the month. And then there's an update to that at the end of the calendar month. And this is what this is. And I'm showing this one because there is a bit of a difference from previous issuances of this outlook. For temperature, not too much different. We've got the equal chances. So at least for the mean temperatures for the month of May, they're officially calling it no direction. You can see over the Ohio Valley and to our south, maybe a little cooler than normal, but based on the big message here, and I think the big difference is you look below the lower right-hand side here, is that the odds of drier than normal conditions during May have increased significantly in the last couple of weeks. And this is reflecting some of that medium range forecast guidance you just saw. And again, expectations are that we just won't have as active a weather pattern as we've had during much of March and April. So that's big news, especially given where we are and the need for lots of field work. So I think really this is a really pretty positive outlook in terms of getting where things are. And so I think the bottom line is, and I'm sure everyone's ready to go here, but it looks like there's going to be some opportunity coming up very, very soon, depending on your soil type, et cetera. But it's coming, and warmer and drier is not a bad thing at this time of the year. So wrapping up here, again, major changes underway with our forecast here. We will have a chance for some light rain, mainly in northern parts of the state over the next 24 to 36 hours, but most areas will remain dry. The big news is it's going to be warmer, and most areas are going to be dry, and that's generally the trajectory that we're on for the weekend and into early next week. And as you just saw, that's also consistent with our medium range. And with that, I will wrap up and introduce next week's speaker, and it turns out to be a repeat performance. We have Dr. Kurt Steinke coming back to talk about soybean and nitrogen applications here, and that's next week, the 11th, for our virtual breakfast. And with that, I'll turn it back to Monica and to Phil.